Sabres win in Chicago, and they have a big homestand coming up this week and next week. We'll preview it and recap it coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on a Monday following the Sabres' second win of the season. They are on the board with another win. And hopefully they can get that rolling into a few more in a row, and they'll have an opportunity to do that on a homestand coming up here that we will preview and talk about some of the matchups and some of the teams that they'll play. And I also will go through or really just set my expectation, what I would take out of this homestand for the Sabres, which will go tomorrow, Tuesday, against Dallas through next Friday against the New York Islanders. So we'll get to that coming up in a little bit on today's show. We'll also talk about some of the updates that we had at practice from Lindy Ruff, including on Rasmus Dahlin, including on Dylan Cousins, and also the line combinations and whatnot. Get to all that coming up today on today's show as well. If you want to get a question or a comment in, be sure to hit us up on our text line. You can sign up for our text club at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. Today, we were discussing in the chat, what is more likely, the Jets or the Sabres breaking their 13-year playoff drought this season? So those are the two teams. If you didn't know, the two longest playoff droughts in major North American sports, it's a tie. It's the Jets and it's the Sabres. It's 13 seasons each. If they were to miss this year, it would be 14. If you want to get really technical, the Jets drought is longer by about 3 months because they would have played their playoff games in January of 2011 versus the Sabres would have played theirs in April of 2011. So technically the Jets is longer, but it's basically the same thing. So I asked, who's more likely to make it? The Jets, who are 2-5 in the NFL, and Aaron Rodgers doesn't matter. All these expectations doesn't matter. They are looking horrible to start the year. Or the Sabres, who also don't look great to start the year either. And I don't know that I was that surprised by this, but everybody in our text club was on the Sabres for this. The Jets would have to go like 8-1 in their next 9 games. The Sabres, there's just such a long season that there is more opportunity really to make it up, I guess. So I don't even know that I got an answer that was, oh yeah, Jets. I got a couple. But 99% of the answers that we got back were that the Sabres will have a longer drive. If you want to get a comment on that, feel free. You could do that. One other thing to get in here before we get rolling on what happened this weekend and then what's coming up. Not pertaining to the Sabres, out in Vancouver, Tyler Myers played his 1,000th game in the NHL. Tyler Myers is the last playoff Sabre. He's the last active player in the National Hockey League that played in a playoff game for the Buffalo Sabres. There might be a guy or two left playing in Europe somewhere. Like, I don't know if Nathan Gerbe is still playing hockey somewhere. I don't think he is. No, Gerbe hasn't played actually for 3 years since he played for Cleveland in the AHL. Ennis retired this summer. He had played in Europe a little bit. Derek Roy had played until recently out in Europe. I don't think there's a guy left. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think it's just Myers. And Myers, who would have been only in his second season, remember, as a 20-year-old, when the Sabres last made the playoffs, got an assist, I believe, in his 1,000th game. He got kind of emotional in post-game after talking about it. Remember him at the beginning. I had his jersey as a kid, high schooler, whatever. He was electric at the start. It's not crazy to think it's been 1,000 games because that does feel like a lifetime ago, right? Myers winning the Calder Trophy, showing up unannounced, first-round pick, but like, how often on Darcy Regier, Lindy Ruff teams did teenage first-round picks make the team out of camp? And then not only did he make the team out of camp, he was awesome. He won the Calder, 48 points, 11 goals in that first season, which, by the way, this is kind of funny in its own right. Myers' career highs in goals and points was that rookie season. 11 goals, never been topped. 48 points, never been topped. Actually, his second season, his year 2, where they also went to the playoffs, he scored 10 goals and had 37 points. Those were his second best totals. So his first 2 seasons with the Buffalo Sabres, he never matched them. He has had a long career here being a pretty decent bottom 4 mid-pair defenseman. I think on a great team, he's on your last pair over the years here. If you're on an average team, he's on your second pair. If you're on a bad team, he's on your top pair. That's kind of how I viewed Myers throughout his career, which has spanned the Sabres and then Winnipeg and then Vancouver. So good for him. He's 34. I mean, he might have a few more years left in the league. I hope so, because it's going to be even more depressing to think about. Not only there's one guy left that has played for the Sabres in the playoffs, but when there are 0 guys left in the playoffs that have done, unless they make the playoffs. That would actually, okay, here we go. Here's a poll. I'll put it at Locked On Sabres on Twitter, and I'll put it on the text line too. What happens first? Tyler Myers retires, thus making it so that there are 0 left active players in the NHL playing in a playoff game for the Sabres, or the Sabres make the playoffs. What happens first? Get that. And I don't know if this is the time to do it. People might feel a little depressed about that. Anyways, let's get to what happened this weekend. The Sabres get a win, 4-2 over Chicago. And it was a game that they should have won, right? They looked good. They looked very good throughout the game. They did get outshot. There were so many moments, though, where I thought they looked really dangerous in this game. And their top line continues to be the thing that I am most optimistic about. And in this game, that was absolutely the case again. Tage Thompson, Tage Peterka, Alex Tuch is a great line. It really is a great line. When they're all healthy, when they're all out there together, they are dynamite. By the way, in this game, the Sabres, it was kind of a tale of 2 halves. The first half of the game, if you go first period and then half of the second period, the Sabres were out shooting Chicago. They had more shot attempts. They had more scoring chances. They had more high danger scoring chances. They had more expected goals. The second half of the game was Chicago. But the Sabres did find a way to get that lead, and then they were kind of on their heels, kind of defending the lead at some point. But again, it's about the top line for me. The plays that Thompson and Peterka, and most notably, made together. Thompson, very quietly, is on a 46-goal pace this season, which is one off what he had 2 years ago. That first goal he scores, where it's just a little drop pass from Peterka, who came into the zone with speed, and then Thompson from distance, like he's in the high slot with a wrist shot, wires it past the goaltender. It's a great goal by Thompson there. Then the Sabres' third goal. They had 4 goals on the night. One was an empty netter by Ryan McLeod, who, by the way, is 3 on the year. One was a pinball goal by Beck Malenstein that was just off a Chicago player, off Malenstein, into the net, like very lucky goal. The 2 real goals the Sabres scored in this game, that nice play Thompson scored on his 4th of the year that I just mentioned, and then Peterka's 4th of the year, which came about a minute and a half left in the second period. That play is those 2 just going to work. They are cycling with each other. They are finding space. They are finding each other. And then Thompson with the perfect play, the goal-scoring play, even though he doesn't score, where he throws the defender for a loop on the half wall. And he's able to get to just enough space where he could pick his head up and take a look. Hey, who's open? And Peterka is backdoor. Like a little high off the net, but he's backdoor. And Thompson wires this pass. I mean, it is a perfect pass right on the tape, right in the wheelhouse so that Peterka can get the shot off quickly. And by the time the shot's off, the goalie isn't even covering the net. Peterka's got the whole net to shoot at. It's an easy goal for him. But that's a good sense play. a good hockey sense play by Peterka, and it's a good chemistry play between Tage and Peterka, where it's one thing to have skill, it's one thing to have speed, it's one thing to have a really good shot, but to score goals, you do have to have a good feel. You have to have a good feel for where your teammates are, and like that would be Thompson's part of this, right? You got to know where your guys are going to be, so where you could distribute it and then be able to make the pass. But you also got to be able to play away from the puck. And that's where I think Peterka has grown the most in the last 2 years, is that play there. That's not a goal because of how fast he is. That Peterka goal is not even a goal because of how good a shot he has. It's a goal that is scored because he has the feel to drop down a little bit, not go right to the back of the net. Because if he's on the goal line there, I don't think Thompson could get the pass through. But, in fact, he doesn't, because the goalie would have the angle. He would never get that pass through. But Peterka has the wherewithal, hey, there's kind of an empty space here if I just go 5 feet a little higher up. Let me get here so I can open up that lane for Tage to make the pass to me. That's a goal that is scored for Peterka by his hockey sense, by his feel, not by his shot, not by his speed. And if Peterka and Thompson could start connecting on goals like that, in addition to the goals they score because of their speed, because of their shooting ability, then that's going to be one of the best lines in hockey this year. So I'm very, very excited about those three. And listen, with the power play again being putrid, 0 for 21 now on the year. 0 for 21. I saw that between the Sabres, the Amherst, and Cincinnati in the ECHL, or Jacksonville in the ECHL, the Sabres the organization is like 0 for 49 on the power play. But sticking with the Sabres here, their power play is so bad, it's so untrustworthy. For them to score goals and win a lot of games, if their power play is going to be one of the worst 5 in the league this year, they're going to need one line to be one of the best in hockey. And I think the Thompson-Peterka tuck line has the potential to be one of the best lines in hockey. That's my big takeaways, or some of my big takeaways, though, from that game. When we come back, going into this week, and from the last couple weeks, Dahlin injury, lines, and also what we're going to see in this homestand. All ahead here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented here on the show by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more that you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Sabres are home for the next 4. Get to that coming up in just a little bit. But let's get to what we saw at practice on Monday morning for the Sabres. And line-wise, not a lot that's really that different. The Thompson line still together with Peterka and Tuch. No mixing up here with Cousins, Quinn, and Kulich. I have liked Kulich. He's looked dangerous. He almost scored right in the Chicago game in the first period on Saturday. He's coming close, and he did score, of course, the other night in Columbus. So he's getting his chances. I'm liking it. I mean, it's only 1 goal in 5 games, but keep in mind, the other 2 teammates he's playing with are really struggling to start the season. So for Kulich to break out, he's probably going to need his 2 line mates to get it together here. And they started doing that a little bit more in the last couple of games, Cousins and Quinn. But that line remains together. Kulich in the top 6. We'll see if that's a staple for the rest of the season. They'll have decisions to make because Jordan Greenway, who's been dealing with this injury, this nagging injury, he was on the ice. But he was rotating in and out with Zach Benson. Benson has also been dealing with on and off injuries since the start of the year, since they came over from Prague. So maybe that's just both guys are kind of banged up. Let's rotate them in and out. Maybe we'll play the maintenance game with those two for the next little bit. Because for now, it's McLeod and Zucker, and then it's Greenway / Benson. And that's a tough decision because Benson is so smart and is so good at what he does. Defensively, he's so strong. He's going to give you a little bit of offense even at this stage in his career where he's probably not physically ready for the NHL, but his mind is allowing him to be here. But Greenway at the same time has been awesome to start the year. And you can't take him off the ice if he's healthy. I also feel like Benson is kind of hard to take off the ice if he's healthy. I feel like if it was down to those two, Benson would be the healthy scratch. And the other thing that's happening right now, when it comes down to if everybody's healthy who plays, and that doesn't include Nicholas Aube-Kubel, who is out of the lineup. Peyton Krebs as the fourth line center is kind of working right now. Like, he's meshing really well. Listen, I'm disappointed with what Peyton Krebs has become as a player. I had high hopes for that guy. I loved him as a prospect. I loved him when he got traded here in the Eichel deal because I thought that guy has got 60 assists per season upside. It's not happening. That's okay, though. For now, let's just look at what he is. He's a bottom six guy. He's a fourth line guy. And right now, I like him on that fourth line. I think he's playing really well on that fourth line. That's the type of player he is now. He's a grinder. He's a small energy guy. He's going to throw his body around. He'll fight if he needs to, and he'll chip in the offense here and there. But he is a fourth line center right now. And I think he's doing good as a fourth line center. So I'm not taking him out of the lineup. He is centering Lafferty and Malenstein. That line is together, and I don't think you're touching it. So if everybody's healthy, to me, you have probably two names that this is going to come down to. It's going to be Kulich and Benson. It's going to be the young guys. I don't think Greenway's out of the lineup if healthy. I don't think Zucker's out of the lineup if healthy. I think the Quinn healthy scratch thing was probably a one-time thing. I would bet that if everyone gets healthy, you're going to see Benson and Kulich either rotate in or out, or you're going to see one of them get sent to Rochester. I would think Kulich would be that guy. I actually don't even know if Benson can go to Rochester. I think he can. I'm not sure, though. So that's what you got forward-wise. No changes on the blue line. Dahlin, Jokiharju, Byron Power, Samuelson, Clifton. That's what you got there. So that's the lines. The other thing I wanted to get to is what Lindy Ruff had to say about Rasmus Dahlin. Dahlin has very much struggled out of the gates here. Through 7 games, a player that had 20 goals last year and was a 70-point guy 2 years ago is off to 0 goals, 2 assists in his first 7 games. He's down more than a minute of ice time per night, and we all see it. He does not look right. He does not look dangerous. He does not look like the Rasmus Dahlin that we are accustomed to. And of course, it lines up injury-wise because he was injured like 2 minutes into the first training camp practice. And maybe it's possible that he just never has been healthy since. And actually, I don't even have to say that now. I think it's confirmed because Ruff said today that Dahlin has not been playing at 100% health. He did say that with the last 2 games, he's getting closer. So that's where you're at with Dahlin. But that's a confirmation from the coach. Dahlin is not healthy, not 100%. He is dealing with something that is nagging. Now, despite his lack of, I think the dangerous plays are the thing you're really not seeing from him. Defensively, I'm actually okay with him. I think he's been fine defensively. It's just those big splash offensive plays that you're not finding. Expected goals for percentage, he's at 58% right now. Like, he's doing fine on some of the advanced numbers. It's just you want more points. You want more offense. You need him also for the power play to get rolling. So all of those areas are places he could improve. I think defensively, though, he is playing well to start this season. And I would hope that Ruff's telling the truth, that he is getting closer and that he could get back to playing more than 25 minutes a night. Because I do think this team is at its best when he's playing 25, 26 minutes a night rather than 22, 23 minutes a night. That's my opinion on Dahlin. So keep an eye on him, though. We'll keep tracking his injury status as we go here. You hope it doesn't become a story of his season, right? We don't even know what the injury was. He got, like, it was a weird, like, mid-injury. I don't even know what that could be. But remember, last year was a story of Thompson season. Tage, the whole year was about how he was hurt, and you couldn't even really fairly judge it. And you just don't want that to happen with Dahlin. You want to be able to fairly judge his season. You want him healthy so that he can actually perform, especially since he's the captain now. Expectations. All right, when we come back, what would you take from this homestand? 4-game homestand coming up. We'll talk about it when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you want to bet these games or just check out the lines for them, you want to see some of the odds for anytime goal score, some of the goalie props, all available to you at FanDuel Sportsbook. And of course, right now at FanDuel, it's the perfect time to check out everything from college football, the NBA season starting soon, the NHL season, the World Series, of course, and the NFL, which is the king of it all. NFL fans, you could start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get the hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view some live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Again, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed with your first $5 bet. You can check it out at FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Final segment here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Sabres and Stars tomorrow night. We will preview that game on our next show. For today's purposes, I want to look at the homestand as a whole. I want to look at big picture here, or big to small picture. 4-game sample size here. From tomorrow, Tuesday night, to next Friday, the Sabres have 4 home games with days in between, by the way. They have 4 days in between the Dallas and Detroit games. Then they go Monday to Friday, so another 4 days, right, between Florida and the Islanders, and then they play back-to-back nights. So they are not going to be very busy here. They're going to have rest. They're going to be home. So the rest advantage is yours. Being at home is an advantage, you would think. I know it hasn't been in recent years for the Sabres, but in theory, it should be an advantage. And it's not the most daunting of schedules. It's not the easiest, right? Florida is Florida. We'll see who's on the ice for them when they get to that point, because last game they were missing their 2 best forwards. Dallas is a great team, but Detroit is not a great team, and Detroit is not off to a great start this year. And the Islanders are the Islanders. Now, the Islanders, though, are a team that I always criticize and always think the Sabres should beat, and they never beat them. They never beat the Islanders when they should, when they need to. Almost never. So those 4 opponents coming up, all at home, rest advantage. To me, the way the start of the season has gone as context, and knowing what the expectation is of this team climbing back into the playoff race, we all know they're going to have to go on runs throughout this year. We all know they're going to have to do better than last year, where they had 1 3-game win streak and they did not get a 4-game win streak all year. There are going to have to be stretches of this year where they stack wins. And part of that reason is we've already seen this team is capable of losing 3 in a row. And I think it's a team that's capable of losing. Well, I mean, take the first 6 games of the year. They are a team capable of losing 5 of 6. So if you want to be a playoff team or compete for a playoff spot this season, knowing you could go on stretches like that on the negative, you have to be able to offset that with the positive. And that was their problem last year. They could not offset their negative stretches with their positive stretches. And this is an opportunity to do that. You've got 1 win in the bank. So get rolling here. 4 home games, rest advantage, 2 teams that I think you should beat if you want to be a playoff team this year in Detroit and the Islanders. Find a way to beat Dallas and Florida and go on a run here. I'm not saying they're going to win all 4, though. That's not enough. That's, to me, is not a fair bar to set for them. I would say, though, I want 6 of 8 points. I want 6 of 8 points on this trip. I would not settle for anything less. 5 is not going to be upsetting. 5 out of 8 is not going to be the end of the world. That's probably making up a little teeny weeny bit of ground on teams above you over the course of the season. But I'm going to want 6. Get at least 6, and hell, give me a 7 or 8 burger, and I'll be even more happy with that. So that's my expectation for this stretch. Because of the rest advantage, I am very interested to see what they do in goal. Because with no back-to-backs until that Islander game, it would say, hey, should Devin Levi play 3 in a row here? And that would be 4 in a row for him. And he's been fine to start the year, but Levi, to me, has had 2 really good games and 1 really bad game. Luukkonen hasn't really been better than that. I mean, he's been same thing, kind of up and down. So to me, I still want to see Levi. I would like to see Levi twice in this homestand. If it were me doing it, I would start Luukkonen against Dallas. I would start Levi against Detroit. And then I would go Luukkonen against Florida, Levi against the New York Islanders. I would go every other on this trip. My guess, though, just a hunch, is that Lindy is going to go Luukkonen, then Levi. You're going to see 3 Luukkonen games, which would be 4 in a row for him, and then you might see Devin Levi in the mix. It all starts tomorrow night, Tuesday night, against the Dallas Stars. By the way, one thing I will talk about on tomorrow's show, what the league is doing tomorrow. It's going to be like a red zone. If you watch NFL Red Zone, it's going to be like the NHL's version of Red Zone. Kind of excited about that. So we'll talk a little bit about that, the Sabres and Stars matchup in more detail on our next show. So come back for that. If you want to sign up for our Locked On Sabres text club, you want an update on what's going on at practice, injuries, if the Sabres make a trade, for heaven's sakes, once in a while, we'll get that to you as well. And if you want to reach out, comment or question, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres. We can sign up for our text club. If you're already a subscriber, shoot me a text. All right, it's going to do it for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Be sure to make your next listen either Locked On Bills with our buddy Joe Marino, recapping Bills Titans, or Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Got to get your edge in fantasy hockey this year. Take up steal and flip. They got your daily tips throughout the season. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.